Welcome to the Podunk Polymath, a podcast dedicated to the sentiments of the secular, sarcastic, screwed-up Southern SJW and skeptic. I'm your host, Chris. Come on in. This is episode 27 of the Podunk Polymath Podcast. Thanks again for joining me. Hope you all having a super wonderful day. On the pre-ramble this week, little defeat for the Trumpster, the Orange Overlord. He was turned down on his Muslim ban by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and it was a unanimous decision, 3-0. So he's unhappy about that, as he is about most things. He gets pissy as fuck, and he tweets silly things because he's a silly man. So, of course, he might, I don't know if he's going to appeal at the Supreme Court. I can't imagine that he wouldn't, given his ego. However, as everybody knows, the court is split 4-4, with the ninth member not being present because Merrick Garland was not confirmed by the Republican GOP obstructionist Congress when Obama was still in. So if it goes split 4-4, then that automatically means the lower court's ruling would stand. And I'm hoping that the Democrats block any fucking Supreme Court nominee that is essentially like Merrick Garland. I mean, I hope. They need to grow spines, okay? So I don't know if it's going to happen. But anyway, also, Betsy DeVos, the uneducated now Secretary of Education, was confirmed. It was 50-50 in the Senate, and of course, Pence cast the winning vote on that for confirmation. So we have Betsy DeVos, who of course is part of the Amway fortune and wants basically to make everything charter and destroy the public school system as we know it, and wants guns in schools for grizzly bears. That's fucking awesome. Jeff Sessions has been confirmed. The man who... I can't make this shit up. Who wasn't confirmed to the federal bench, I believe it was in the 80s, because he was too racist. And a letter from Coretta Scott King convinced the senators not to confirm him because he was racist. This time that didn't matter, and Elizabeth Warren actually tried to read that letter from Coretta Scott King that was the downfall of his federal court appointments. And she was told to shut up, basically, by Mitch McConnell, saying that she broke a Senate rule that doesn't allow you to impugn the character of another senator. Keep in mind that three other guys, had read portions from the same letter earlier in the session, but apparently because she's a woman, Mitch McConnell just couldn't have that. He likes his women quiet and obedient. So Elizabeth Warren is a bit of a liberal hero, and I'm thinking that she may have a leg up if she would decide to run for president in 2020. So you never know. So that's what's going on right now in the Trump agenda. Of course, there was a Saturday Night Live skit where Spicer was depicted by Melissa McCarthy. It was fucking hilarious. Spicer didn't care, apparently, but Trump was furious because I'm sure it was a woman portraying him, and we can't have that. We know what a misogynist prick he is, so that's no surprise. And I hate the fact that everything has to be Trump news, but I'm sorry, when this man does as much destructive shit as he's doing, what choice do I have, really? I also want to mention that there's been marches going on still. There was another rally at the state capitol. There was an immigration rally, I believe. Another one. There was in Murfreesboro, there was a local politician was beset on by his constituents and shouted at. So that's always good. Lincoln Chaffetz ran out crying during his town hall, and that's always hilarious. So we're getting a blowback here, and we need to keep pushing. And this is the same kind of shit that happened when the Tea Party got, into things. But the difference is this ain't fucking astroturfing. This is actually people, real grassroots shit for the most part. So that's a good sign. We just need to keep it up and hope that the Trumpster doesn't try to do some shit like fucking basically disregard people and just start killing people wholesale. Who knows, man? This guy is unpredictable as fuck, and that's why it's so scary. I also want to mention that I got a new review on iTunes from guest Fred Sims, who was on episode 25 about the prisons, of course. Chris is doing an amazing job helping everyone tap into their inner polymath. Thank you for having the guests you do and talking about the things you are. These are viewpoints everyone can learn from. Listen to this show, especially episode 25, but not for any particular reason or anything. Ha, ha, ha. Of course, he was on that episode, and he did a great job, I thought, and that was a great episode. I also wanted to mention I got an email from a listener. Let me go ahead and read that for you. The title of it's Prison Reform Podcast, 13th Amendment. I actually got this 9 days ago, and I should have read it on the last episode, but I forgot. The first part of the 13th Amendment says, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. We never really ended slavery in America, just shifted the part of the population that is slaves. Another book and documentary that discusses the effects of it is Slavery by Another Name. The documentary is on YouTube and is about 2 hours and discusses how slaves were free for just about a hot minute and where our current perceptions about black people is based. Another documentary is Ava DuVernay's called The 13th, which is on Netflix. So thank you for that email, and I completely forgot to mention any of that shit on the show, and I should have because I saw 13th, that Netflix documentary, and I loved it. And I also knew about the 13th Amendment from reading different things already. But thanks for reminding me with that email. And, of course, like I said during that episode, we could do a whole series of episodes about that subject because it's so wide-ranging. For the palaver this week, I have somebody who I like admire a great deal, actually. He is one of the organizers of NaNoCon, 2017, which will be on March 18th here in Nashville, Tennessee. He is also an ex-Mennonite and is with the Sunday Assembly here in Nashville. So it's a great conversation. I want to apologize ahead of time. As far as the audio, he was driving and it went in and out on occasion. I got most of it fixed, but there are still some parts that are not great. They break up some. So anyway, sorry about the overly long pre-ramble. Let's move on to the palaver.
Where's the best place to meet your online friends? Where's the best party where the fun never ends? Where will Bobby Carey be our MC too? I bet you'd go if you only knew. It's ReasonCon, it's ReasonCon in Hickory, North Carolina. It's ReasonCon, and the speakers couldn't be finer. We've got Matt Dillahunty and Aaron Ra, Callie Wright and Lawrence Krauss. We've got god-awful movies coming to you live, and Jim Craig and Shelley Siegel really jive. It's ReasonCon, meet the people in your favorite podcasts. It's ReasonCon, the conference where you'll have a blast.
Hi, this is Trav Mamone, host of the By Any Means podcast. Join me every week as I interview bloggers, podcasters, writers, and activists about the intersections of atheism, humanism, racial justice, feminism, LGBTQ rights, and other social issues. You can subscribe to the podcast through iTunes, Spreaker, and Stitcher, and you can read my blog at freethoughtblogs.com/byanymeans. And remember, that's by spelled B-I. Come take a listen to the musings of a queer humanist because, hey, aren't we all a little bi-curious?
Welcome to another edition of the Palaver here on the Podunk Polymath Podcast. This week I have with me a gentleman who fills a lot of shoes at the Sunday Assembly here in Nashville. And he's also the organizer, one of the organizers at NaNoCon 2017, which is the National Nuns Convention coming here in March. I'd like to present to you Patrick Horst. How's it going, Patrick?
I'm doing great, Chris. Good to talk with you. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. First of all, why don't you just give everybody quite a little brief synopsis about yourself?
Well, I grew up as the son of missionary parents. I grew up in Italy. My parents were pastors over there, and my background's Mennonite, which if you know anything about that, means that I was raised kind of like pacifist. It's kind of like an alternative Christian persuasion, somewhat related to the Amish. And I was involved with that church all through high school, college in Europe, and then when we came back to the States when I started college. And make a long story short, I not only left the Mennonite faith and I'm now an atheist and a secular humanist, but I not only did that, but then left the Mennonite church and joined the Army. And I just got out of the military. I've been in for 12 and a half years and just served my last day working for Uncle Sam here at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Last August 2016 was my last day. So.
Wow. So you you left all that stuff behind from the Mennonites, the pacifism and the
That's right. I'm kind of the black sheep that went off and joined the Army. So.
Yeah. What were you doing in Europe?
Well, my folks were missionaries over there. I spent the first 13 years of my life in southern Italy, specifically in Palermo, Sicily. And then the last 4 of which I spent going 26 hours away by train in the Black Forest in Germany.
Oh.
So kind of got to do a little bit of traveling there and meet a bunch of different people. So I guess it's kind of like part of my growing up identity of having lived overseas. And I speak several languages from having been in Europe, between Italian and then learned Spanish and a little bit of German. And then since I came back to the States, I also I've picked up modern standard Arabic through my training in the Army. And I've also learned a little bit of Lebanese, which is a dialect of modern standard, it's a type of Arabic. So.
Oh, so you have a little skill with a little gift for languages, apparently.
Well, got a little bit of the habla, I guess, but yeah, I unfortunately don't get to use too much of that anymore living in Christian County, Kentucky, where I live. So it's kind of just sitting there dormant. But no, I enjoy languages, and I guess kind of have always enjoyed it. That the music side of the brain kind of have a knack for it. So.
Well, I lived in Germany briefly, and I've been to Schwarzwald.
Yeah, there you go.
Black Forest.
Very nice. That's right.
Pretty nice place. I enjoyed visiting there. I lived in Heidelberg for a little while.
Okay. Yeah, it's a beautiful country. Were you folks in the military, or how did you end up over there?
Yeah, my dad's in the Air Force, or was in the Air Force, I should say.
Okay, so, gotcha.
Yeah, I got to go twice, actually. First time was in Kaiserslautern at Ramstein.
I've actually been there, yeah.
And then Heidelberg on the second deployment. So, yeah, that's cool, man.
Good deal.
I think everybody should travel to Europe and get a little culture,
Yeah, if you get a chance, it's a cool way to broaden your horizons, I guess.
So what motivated you to kind of leave the Mennonites? I mean, was it a gradual process, or was this something that just happened?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that my experience with the Mennonite church and leaving it was not only gradual, like you mentioned, but it was a fairly positive one in the sense that, I mean, as Mennonites go, saying like you're Mennonite is sort of like saying you're Jewish. You could be, Hasidim really on the conservative side, or you could be the Beastie Boys, and like my grandparents on, my mom's side had come out of the Amish, and they spoke Pennsylvania Dutch and, definitely wore the conservative clothing and all that, but never did the horse and buggy, at least not, since they had left. I know I was never raised that way, but yeah, I grew up, like son of missionary kids in Italy, which of course was just a completely different animal. I mean, for all intents and purposes, I was raised like an Italian kid, but yeah, I would say that my experience with that was fairly positive in the sense that, if you know much about the Mennonites, they tend to be, fairly progressive and, some of them, and fairly open-minded, receptive towards, other cultures in the sense that, like myself, a lot of people in the Mennonite church have grown up overseas. So, have lived in like, who knows, Ethiopia, or, I have a brother right now who is, him and his wife are missionaries with the Mennonite church, and they're in Thailand. So I guess I'd say that my experience with the Mennonite church overall was, fairly positive in the sense that I'm really close to my family that are still there, in the church. And so it was more of a gradual having my horizons broadened in college. I actually went to Eastern Mennonite College, and now university at the time. And I guess a lot of the kids that I was involved with there and associated with were involved with like kind of like peaceniks, sort of like hippie types. So that kind of challenged my faith and just let me know that there was more out there than what I had been raised on. But it really wasn't until basically 2003, 2004 that I really started to question my faith seriously, like right around the time I left for the Army in 2004, I knew that I didn't really believe in, like, I remember at the time the Iraq war was going on, so I had a brief period where I kind of like went back into the church, and maybe it's because I thought I was going to go die overseas in a war that I kind of went back in the church. But, within a year of having been in the Army, I mean, a lot of those doubts and issues and stuff like that really hadn't resolved themselves. So it's been a gradual process ever since. And I think probably one of the most influential things of kind of like pushing me to make a decision and really come clean and come out as a non-believer, as a secular person, was that in 2006 I got married, and my wife at the time, we're now divorced, very conservative Christian, very, I guess you might say, fundamentalist, evangelical, you might say. And so when we got married, then it's sort of like her situation stabilized. So she kind of made a right turn going back to her roots, and I just kind of drifted more to the left, so to speak. And so as she got more involved with the church and was kind of, wanting me to attend and be involved with her, she said, well, you really got to figure out what you believe. You got to, really kind of, look into it, study up, and figure out where you're coming from. And so I did, and it didn't turn out the way she had hoped. Make a long story short, her and the family were off on church once, and I had been given a book by Lee Strobel called The Case for Christ. Hey, read this, it'll answer all your questions. Well, I didn't read the book, but I watched a movie that was on YouTube, and it was basically like a couple hour version of that book by Lee Strobel. And man, I watched that thing, and it just really just started coming apart for me right there. And so I sat down on the computer and just started writing. And it became a process of hours and weeks and really months of just kind of like pouring out my frustrations. And not only didn't work about the Christian faith, but the things that I thought were just openly deceptive. And so as soon as I figured that out, I kind of started showing it to anybody who was interested, and just kind of like, this is what the Christian faith is about, right? This is what, in the Bible's own words, it believes. This is what, Christianity is all about. And mostly talking about the issue of hell, and that we're essentially set up for failure right from the beginning, and that we are responsible for our own salvation from the very human nature that God gave us. Anyways, that's a whole different piece. So, I was sharing it with my family and my dad, who's a pastor, and my sister, who has a degree from seminary. She was leading a church, like a small, like 20, 30 people church there in Virginia at the time. And so I shared it with her, and to her unending credit, one morning when I was down there visiting, I was home from the Army visiting, she got up in church, at her church one Sunday morning, and read it verbatim to her church as sort of like the sermon, and a lot of these people, very open-minded and questioning of their faith in a positive sense. And so, yeah, I just kind of owe it to her for validating and putting my words, my doubts, my questions out there for consideration. And I, from there got kind of plugged into some other theology branches, a lot more gentler, you might say, branches of Christianity. But I mean, again, the fundamental flaws and the fundamental, essentially, mistakes or falsehood of what a lot of the Christian faith is based on is what led me to say, you know what, this is really not where I'm at. And what really kind of turned the corner for me was I was, as I mentioned, stationed at Fort Campbell in Kentucky, and there's a library there on post, and believe it or not, they had some books on CDs, and it was like, a lot of the classics, Four Horsemen, God is Not Great, and The God Delusion, all these classics by, Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens and all that, and really kind of warmed me up to the idea of, well, maybe I am an atheist. Maybe that's what I am, just because I kind of, considered myself, I guess, an agnostic, you might say. And so that was all going on, and I was reading that stuff, and right around that time in 2012, 2013, I got involved with meetup.com and found out about some groups such as the Nashville Atheists that were holding meetings. And so I went to my first meeting, and man, some of the people that I met there, like I literally drove 2 hours from where I lived to go down there for this meetup at a bar somewhere. and my life has been different ever since. Within a couple months after that, Sunday Assembly was started, and I just happened to be there kind of like from day one, and it's really changed my life, and really just so happy to have found a group of people that I not only can walk this path with, but it's enriched my life immensely to be plugged into the secular community, and I'm just excited to be able to the point now where I can be able to provide something for other people.
Let's backtrack a little bit. What are some of the, I don't know much about the Mennonites. Can you give me kind of a brief idea of, how they started and what kind of their strictures are and stuff like that?
So the Mennonites are a fairly diverse congregation or a denomination, you might say, because some things within the Mennonite faith really lend themselves to more conservative alignment, but others are fairly liberal. So in terms of like historically, Mennonites, a lot of them believe in very much that they should be in the world but not of it. And, the Amish and the Mennonites that are conservative, like kind of maintain their own separate communities. A lot of them still speak Low German, or Pennsylvania Dutch, so they just kind of want to do their thing and mind their own business and live kind of old school, and I can respect that. But, like I was never raised without the technology that some of the Amish go with it. I mean, we always had electricity, and that was always more mainstream in that sense. But another thing about the Mennonites is that they, as I mentioned, they're pacifists. They believe that you should not be kind of like swear allegiance to Caesar, so to speak, of supporting or even voting and getting involved with the government, that they just depend entirely on God. And, kind of like the history of that is that in Europe, when they were being founded, the Anabaptists or the Mennonites were persecuted by both the Protestants and the Catholics, and so they kind of bounced around different places. Some went to Russia, Ukraine, whatever, and some came to Canada and the United States. But, I mean, my family's been here for like probably 300 years or so. And, that's it in a nutshell. As far as they very much believe in taking care of their own. For example, when my mom was growing up, she lived on a farm in Pennsylvania, and they lived along the Susquehanna River. And one year it flooded really badly. Like pretty much their whole farm was underwater, and it was declared a federal disaster area. The feds came in and, they showed up at the farm to do an assessment and, to, basically give them some recovery money. And my grandmother turned them away. She says, no, our church will take care of us, and kind of, the family was really in a rough spot for a long time, like kind of set everybody back. But that just kind of speaks to the self-reliance and community support that is kind of how the Mennonites do it. And also, as I mentioned, they're pacifists. They don't believe in the military or in doing anything like with that. So like my dad, who would have been a young man during Vietnam time, he did conscientious objector service. He did I think a year or two of service in Central America instead of going overseas to Vietnam. So when I joined the Army, again, kind of like after the Iraq War had just kicked off, that was definitely a big departure. So my parents, we had that conversation. I think they understood where I was coming from and my reasons. They were probably just wishing that I had kind of come up with a different answer to the questions that we were asking. But to their credit, they showed up at Fort Benning and saw me graduate as, from infantry basic training. So, I guess, like I said, the Mennonites and the leaving that part, I'd say, is still a fairly positive experience, but the whole, everything since there has been a lot rougher and a lot different. So I hope that answers your question.
So you didn't have a problem so much with the church itself. I mean, it's pretty tame as far as that goes.
There's still some of the hang-ups that, a lot of the churches have, like such as, definitely, I don't know, like the whole guilting you, like your sinful nature and just making you feel like you're a terrible person who can't do right and are incapable of doing right for yourself unless you are submitted to God or unless you're captive to your sinful nature, or for example, like many evangelical faiths, like there's a lot of sexual repression going on, or, definitely not sex positive in that sense of encouraging people and validating them and discovering and developing their own sexuality and all that. So that's something that has been a process that I've kind of coming out of the evangelical faith, of just having a much more positive attitude towards sexuality and relationships in that way since I've come out of it. So,
Yeah, I guess I meant more within the framework of Christianity as far as different denominations.
right. Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, for me coming out of it was fairly positive. Like I guess some of the hang-ups that I've had and some of the real heartbreak that I've had since then has been, for me personally, when I, was married to somebody who was extremely religious and militant and, fundamentalist and, Glenn Beck, quiverful, homeschooling, almost prepping for Armageddon type, living off the grid, very much kind of like from that whole fringe of the militant, evangelical side of things, very much dominionist that, raising kids to essentially take over the government, and that, essentially what we're seeing play out right now with Donald Trump, of a lot of those people that are being put in positions of power, such as Betsy DeVos, are right from my ex-wife's camp. You know what I mean? So that's really kind of the side of Christianity that is extremely painful and damaging and controlling and manipulative. And that's what really kind of pushed me personally to really distance myself and make a clean cut from Christianity. And, my kids are still, living most of the time with their mother. And so, we're co-parenting them. And so that's kind of like, they're kind of in the front lines of just this whole culture battle, really, when they cut right through our house, man. And it was just really rough. So it's cost me my marriage, and, my family is broken apart just because of, that I was willing to live and to, work with my wife and finding a way to move forward as a family. But for her, hardcore fundamentalism, it was sort of like her way or the highway. So coming out of that marriage experience, I've seen kind of like a much different side of Christianity, that some of the people who come out of a Christian faith and have really been burned by it, I think are more affected by that side of the house than by anything that I would have experienced with the Mennonite church.
Right. I understand. So you said you got involved with Sunday Assembly.
Yeah.
Or actually, first it was Nashville Atheists, I guess, and then that went into Sunday Assembly. You said you met up with some people.
Yeah.
At a meetup first, and they kind of went from there. How did that progress?
Yeah, I mean, Tim Bolton is a guy in Nashville that has been like an organizer for Nashville Atheists, and it's kind of like, put it on the map as far as I know, that, of having an organization like on meetup.com. And so I think I went to one or two events with them, and then through that met a bunch of the people who I would get involved with Sunday Assembly Nashville. So it was really over a period of about 2 to 3 months that, like I said, I showed up for my first Nashville Atheists event. It was just kind of like a get together to hear like a musical performance at a bar in Franklin is really all it was. But then through that, I found out, there was the event announced that, hey, we're looking to get this essentially secular congregation started to meet up once a month. And they kind of had a little bit of the story of these two comedians from England who started a community there. And in the course of like 7 months, it went from like their first meeting to they were having like 1,000 people show up on a monthly basis. And so they decided to do this thing called 40 Dates and 40 Nights, where they like literally did like all these, hit like a bunch of hotspot cities all over the English speaking world. And in each one, they started, they kind of helped to launch a city, or like something to be on a Thursday night. And I don't know if it was just the combination of being in Nashville, the whole buckle of the Bible Belt, but, we didn't have a whole lot of people, or as many people as they thought, that when they first decided to make Nashville one of the cities. So it's sort of like we snuck in below the bar, but, it's one of the assemblies in the United States that's done the best. And, it's a phenomenal, very talented, dynamic group of people, and a lot of people who have invested a lot in the community. Nashville being Nashville, we have a really strong band that has been, playing and kind of like doing the music at assemblies for the last 3 years, and they're phenomenal. I mean, they have a repertoire of probably, several hundred songs of just like different pop songs that they play or adapt to for like to this theme or the message of whatever it is that month. And so it's certainly been a lot of fun to be able to be involved with that, and Adam and Steven and, a bunch of the, Deb and Kate and a bunch of the people that have been involved with that have really turned it into something cool. And now they're at the point now where they're writing their own music and creating music that's unique to the secular community. And so it's kind of exciting to see that happen. And I'm hopeful that we'll be able to kind of premiere or debut some of that stuff at NaNoCon this March to be able to play it for people. So we'll see.
What are some of the things that Sunday Assembly does?
Okay. It's first of all, it's a secular community that is for anybody who is not affiliated with a church, in the sense that, I'd say that probably the majority of people that are involved and participate are atheists, but there's agnostic, there's, spiritual but not religious. It's technically open to even like Christians or religious people, in the sense that, it's sort of like, it's very welcoming and I guess tolerant, you might say, radically inclusive in the sense of welcoming anybody. But as far as what the programming is or what the core beliefs are, it's definitely secular, definitely not spiritual in any way. And, I've brought my mother and sister, who are both Christians, there. And yeah, they might have heard some things that they didn't agree with, but it's not like there was a whole lot of religion bashing going on. It's more like, we're just getting together once a month to talk about the things that we love and the things that we're excited about. And, it's not so much of people telling the story about how they left the faith, although there's a part of that, but it's more like, where do we go from here? What is it about life that makes it beautiful and exciting and worth living? And so, on any given assembly, you might hear like a presentation of a professor from Vanderbilt talking about exoplanets, or, we've had some about like, developments in microbiology or, bacteria, or somebody talking about, like a philosophy professor talking about neo-stoicism, or, you name it. It's just something different every month that is enriching. And, the motto of Sunday Assembly is live better, help often, and wonder more. So in other words, live better meaning find ways to improve your life and improve, who you are and enrich it. Help often meaning that there's a service component. We're involved with, like today in Nashville, there's an event set up to distribute things that we've collected to the homeless. And then the wonder more part is just deepening our understanding of the world we live in, and knowledge and science, and the appreciation of the mystery and the beauty of it. And yeah, that's just kind of like you wrap it all together, and it's just our way of celebrating life and having a community of like-minded people to share it with. Don't y'all occasionally help the community do certain things in the community for the community or whatever? Yeah, certainly the homeless thing that's going on today is an example. I've done like a creek cleanup several times. We've done like gathering school materials for disadvantaged kids who, might have a certain need. So yeah, it's there's several areas of, like we did like a gift exchange through different organizations over Christmas to give Christmas gifts to kids. I've served meals at the Room at the Inn, which is for homeless people, and it's actually a Christian organization, but, we support it as just a way of giving to the community. And so, yeah, there's a lot of ways that Sunday Assembly is involved. That's excellent. There's a lot of people, I think, who don't really, they kind of think it's atheists as bad people, I guess, sort of. They don't really understand them, but there's a lot of the secular people in the secular community who take place in these charitable drives and do things for the community. And I think that should be recognized, and I don't think it's recognized enough, especially with the rise of the nuns. That's right. And that kind of segues into the Nashville Nuns Convention. Sure. 2017. What was, because this is the second year. Correct. What was kind of the genesis of this idea? Well, one of the first meetups that I went to way back in the day, 3.5 years ago, was an event put on by the Murfreesboro Freethinkers, hosted at the house of my good friend Gail Jordan, who's basically the leader of Murfreesboro Freethinkers. And she and Elliot Cantor had organized a visit to the area, to Nashville, basically about this time last year, January of last year. She got in touch with me and a couple others and said, hey, we want to organize a visit by David Silverman, who is president of American Atheists, and he had a book that he was touring called Fighting God. So she was interested in bringing him to the area and maybe, having a couple book signing events at local bookstores. And she wrote and said, hey, you guys want to do something with this? Like maybe just have like an afternoon, 1 or 2 hour lecture type event. And said, heck yeah, we would. So myself and like Brenda, a few other people from Sunday Assembly, and Gail kind of started putting some pieces together and kind of, okay, we need to find a venue for this. At this point, a date that she had agreed for him to come down was like 7 weeks out from when this whole thing started. So we had kind of like a really compressed timeline to make this happen. So in the 7 week time, we found a venue. Brenda did of one of the high schools in Nashville. And not only that, but then we kind of started asking around, of people who wanted to be involved and support it. And actually, Chris, things really started to take off when I think I mentioned something to you, and you said something about it on a Facebook group for podcasters, I think. And before you know it, man, like the word had spread like wildfire, and we had people starting to show up and, sign up on our, like a little Facebook event that we had started for it. And before you knew it, look, we had, like over 100, 150 people that, were signing up, and it's like, holy cow, what are we going to do with this thing? So it kind of took on a life of its own. So you kind of were the catalyst that got things going, man. And I appreciate that, because when it was all said and done, we had 4 speakers and probably 12 workshops that happened that earlier in the day. And again, David Silverman, he's kind of like a firebrand atheist. He was our keynote speaker. We had like a potluck event that, people brought all kinds of dishes and food. And when it was all said and done, man, I think I would have been happy if we'd had 200 people show up. I'd have been delighted if it was 300. Well, dude, 400 people showed up. And so that was just completely, blew expectations way out of the water. I mean, we had people driving in from as far as Georgia and like Western Tennessee. I mean, Memphis and, like South, like Alabama, and like some actually came in or flew in from like Canada, just kind of like they knew people who were planning it, involved and stuff. But it's just sort of like there's this whole unmet desire and need for secular community that wasn't being addressed. And so we were kind of, honored at the right place at the right time to be able to throw something together that meant something for people. And it was really cool, man. It's sort of like the whole "if you build it, they will come" phenomenon. And not only that, but people just kind of showing up out of the woodwork and saying, hey, I can do graphic design. And so this guy in Georgia, Don, he threw together some graphic stuff for us. And Tracy Moody here in Nashville threw together a pretty cool logo for it. And, just people started contributing their talents, and, I could help you write a press release and, all this different stuff. And it kind of, just kind of came together in a way that was more than we ever would have expected. And so at the end of it, despite the fact that we hadn't charged of admission, it was like free, that just through sponsorships and stuff like that and a few t-shirt sales, we were able to make ends meet and come out in the black. We didn't lose money, which was really cool. So it was like, well, we just thought, let's make this a yearly thing. And so now we're at our second year, and the date for this year is going to be March 18, which is Saturday, then like right after spring break, right after St. Patrick's Day. And Matt Dillahunty is going to be the keynote speaker. And man, from anybody who knows him, he's the host of the Atheist Experience, which is one of the longest running TV and radio and podcast shows out of Austin, Texas. And I've seen him speak several times, and he's just phenomenal. I mean, Matt is just a interesting combination of kind of this laid back nature, kind of like this pugnacious, secular, rational, skeptical debater. But at the same time, he's one hell of a nice guy, and we're just, really honored to have him come out. And so he's coming. JT Eberhardt, who is one of the co-founders of Skepticon, is going to be here, and he's also a debater. Really interesting guy, got a lot going on. Mandisa Thomas is coming up from Atlanta. She's one of the rising leaders in the secular community. Really, she's founder and president of Black Nonbelievers, and definitely excited to hear her speak again. I've heard her a couple times and really appreciate who she is and what she does. Callie Wright is coming she's returning. She's has the Gaytheist Manifesto podcast, and she's really well received, and so excited for her to be here. I mean, Gail Jordan of Recovering from Religion is going to be back. I'll be there. Of course, helping out. Cass Mitchley, who is the Everyone's Agnostic podcast, he's going to be actually leading a panel for secular podcasters, which sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. Going to have the Sunday Assembly band who is going to be closing things out. They left a Christian cult that they'd been involved with for years. And so it's a really dramatic personal story, but then they've started a band that they're really phenomenal. Their name is Chibi Kadama. And if you do a search for it, I'm really excited for them to be able to participate. Man, there's just a lot of really cool people. And I know I'm leaving some out there. But, yeah, go check it out on the website. We're really excited for the lineup. But people can find out more about it at NashvilleNuns.com. So there you go.
Yeah, I remember last year the way it kind of came together because I kind of knew all those people anyway, and I remember Tracy putting down the logo together, and I remember you said something to me to dial it back a little bit because it was too much too quick. You're like, wait a minute, don't share it anymore until we got because you didn't have anything really set up, I think, yet.
Yeah, you're right, man. It's sort of like all these people were finding out about it, and we're getting all these requests for information, and we're just scrambling to get a website up. And so, finally, I think 2 to 3 weeks before the actual event, we finally get this website launched. And, I remember what you're saying, man. It's I kind of dude, hold up, man. Don't tell too many people yet because, we're not going to have anything to point them towards. So, yeah, it ended up working out pretty well. But, no, it was definitely thanks to you and some of your podcaster buddies that kind of put us on the map and spread the word. And hopefully we'll have just a great turnout this year, and excited about it.
Yeah, last year was interesting because I got to see Callie, which I'd seen her at ReasonCon, and of course I'm friends with her on Facebook and through the podcasting community. So I was really excited that she was there, and of course David Silverman I got to meet. And although I don't necessarily agree with everything he says, I mean he is a prominent figure and he's a pretty cool guy.
Yeah.
Let me backtrack a little bit. The reason I think people kind of were attracted to this were because in the South especially, we're kind of a minority, almost like, I don't want to say persecuted, because I don't want to pull that Christian persecution complex for atheists, but we feel more, I think, because of the religion has such a stranglehold in this area. There's churches on every corner, and, it kind of makes you feel like a minority. So I think, especially here in the South, people are more of our ilk, are more interested in these sort of things where they can come together with people of like mind. And I know that ReasonCon, which I'm going to this year, is very popular, and that's in Hickory, North Carolina. And I think that has showed that we can really pull it off here in the South. So, and I think Nashville is a central location. 3 interstates intersect here. It's south, but it's we're near the Midwest, sort of. We border our state is the one that's bordered by the most other states.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of reasons I think why this could catch on and become even bigger, to be honest with you. And I'm impressed this year that you got Mandisa, because I'm really looking forward to meeting her. In fact, I think I actually messaged her last year about her coming, because I was messaging a whole bunch of people to see if they would be interesting, because I got overzealous, like you said. It was messaging a bunch of people.
Yeah, cool.
Seeing if she could come, I'm glad to see she's actually coming this year. She is one of the lights in the South. She's a leader of Black Non-Believers, and that's a pretty big organization she's got. And then she's got different cities where she's set up, where she's based out of Atlanta.
Yeah.
And there are other cities, it's spread to other cities. So
yeah, for sure.
I'm definitely excited to see her. And JT Eberhard I've never met, but I've seen him around the community, mm-hmm. The online community, I guess. And I'm looking forward to seeing him. So I'm really excited about this year. And, of course, we're moving to a bigger high school, I guess you could say.
Yeah, definitely.
Hillsboro, where is Hillsboro?
Yeah, Hillsboro is right across from Green Hills Mall, and it's kind of like a different animal in the sense that last year where we were kind of out in this residential area, and it was cool because, parking wasn't a problem, and it was, just kind of out there to ourselves, and, there's fairly cheap hotels, whereas this year we're in an area that's, it's like a really nice mall is right across the way, and there's 100 restaurant options. So we're kind of going to do it a little bit differently this year in the sense that instead of providing a potluck meal, we're just going to kind of cut people loose and they can kind of pick their own thing. I mean, people can definitely bring food to share, and we might still do something kind of like potluck oriented, but it's just going to be a little less organized just because that's such a massive undertaking to organize and to do well, to feed 400 to 700 people. Which is what we could have. That's quite an undertaking. So we're just going to let people kind of do their own thing and, but still be able to do it in a way that, grab some of your new friends or some of the people that you came with, or, hey, let's all link up at this restaurant. You can kind of go there together. People can kind of, find whatever suits their taste or their preference. But yeah, the Green Hills Mall is there, and we are in the process right now of announcing some hotel options that we have some block rates, special deals going on for people who are coming in from out of town. Just because, yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, a lot of people traveling several hours or more to come in. And so whereas we were kind of wanting to have like a social thing and an after party afterwards, a lot of people just kind of hit the road because not only was it a long day, but they had to get back. If they didn't have a place to stay, they kind of needed to hit the road. So what we're trying to do this year is, number one, end it a little bit early, but give people some good hotel options where you can stay with a bunch of other people who are involved with NaNoCon. And another thing I want to say about that is, there's a lot of, like you said, cons that are starting, especially in the South, and we're super excited for that to be happening, ReasonCon and others. But the one thing that we're trying to do with NaNoCon is, whereas you go to some of these conventions in the past that, I was at Reason Rally over the summer, and while it's cool and there's some great speakers and some great events, for some of these things, you're looking at spending, $50 to $100 or more just to get in, just for the ticket, and so that, while that's still a pretty good deal for somebody who's, definitely plugged in and an activist within the secular movement, and they're, really excited about hearing some of these speakers, $100 ticket is going to be enough that somebody who's just kind of checking things out, not really sure where they fit into the whole thing, definitely don't want to consider themselves as an atheist or whatever, but they just kind of want to check things out. $100 is going to be a little steep for them. So we're trying to keep it that we're charging an entry fee this year just to be able to pay the bills in a more sustainable way, the cost of the high school and everything. But we're trying to keep it affordable and cheap enough to where, like right now, the tickets are $15, and that's definitely not going to deter anybody, like even college students, to where if somebody has, they want to participate, but that's going to be an issue for them, the $15, then they can contact us and say, hey, I want to volunteer, and 2 hours of volunteering, and we'll comp you your ticket. Just anything from as simple as helping people get signed up at the front desk to, showing people where to park or helping set up or, cleaning things up afterwards, and you can be in NaNoCon for free. So the point of what we're trying to do is to make it approachable, affordable, and fun for people who are just kind of, checking it out, that, in other words, they might not be, really plugged in, secular humanists or atheists. Maybe they're just sort of like, like the name implies, maybe they're just nuns. They're non-religious. They're not really plugged into anything. They just want a place that's not religion-based to be around like-minded folks, and that's what we hope to be, and to make it affordable and approachable for people.
That's actually a good point, because tickets for ReasonCon are kind of pricey, but it's a 2-day event too, and they have more speakers, I think, and they've got convention room at the whole hotel they're renting out, so I guess that makes it a little different. But
yeah,
that's nothing against them, or whatever. It's just a different idea, and the idea we got here is kind of to introduce people to stuff.
Yeah, I've had a lot of fun at places like Skepticon, or some kind of like you're saying, ReasonCon, that actually do the overnight thing. And that's cool because, you're getting to know, you're hanging out, you're partying, whatever. That's all good. And there's definitely a place for that. The one thing that we found is that, we're trying to keep our overhead fairly low with using a high school venue so that it's affordable for people to be able to come and check it out and participate. But, once you start reserving hotels and block rooms and catering and all that, man, it just really runs your prices up so much that you have to charge those higher fees. So, I definitely appreciate ReasonCon and Skepticon, and who are free, actually, that they're kind of trying to provide that kind of like overnight weekend experience. But for us, we're just trying to keep it to a one-day thing for people to be able to check it out. And who knows, we might go to like a multi-day thing sometime in the future. But for right now, this is kind of our speed. This is where we're at, and we hope people can come out and have fun and take advantage of it.
Well, I would like to see it become bigger, to be honest with you, because Nashville's a pretty big city. Not only that, it's more progressive.
Yeah,
I guess you could say, than other places in the South. In fact, our mayor is self-described that way. So
yeah, for sure.
And of course, Nashville's, well known throughout the world, not just here in the country. Of course, no, some negative connotations go along with that, but that's okay. There's no such thing as bad publicity, I guess. So there is that. I mean, there is kind of, people know where Nashville is. And I think we have the potential to become even bigger than the other ones even. I think Skepticon, is that in Dallas?
Skepticon is in Springfield, Missouri. So it's kind of like it's a college town out there. And it's kind of like a unique combination of, college town, but they do rent out a whole conference center. And I mean, it's a good time. It's kind of like got its own culture and kind of thing that they do out there at Skepticon. But I mean, for who they are and the fact that they run it entirely on donations and fundraising, I mean, what they've been able to do there is phenomenal. And, that was kind of like one of my first conventions for me personally, Skepticon 7 2 years ago. And no, man, I appreciate what they're trying to do, and I actually had the privilege of being like a workshop presenter last year myself, so I appreciated that opportunity. So that was, I appreciate what they're trying to do.
Yeah, you're talking about the workshops. I'm going to talk about that for a second here. They haven't actually been announced yet, I believe.
Right.
That February 11th, I think, is the date that was set for that. But you had mentioned already that we know of one, sort of a podcast one, hosted by Cass Medgley, and of course myself will be there, and probably Tucker Drake from Atheist in the Trailer Park.
Yeah.
Joe Kindick from Buckling the Bible Belt. So that should be interesting, I think. There has been an explosion of that, I have noticed, over the last couple of years for these type of podcasts are everywhere. And I think anytime there are more voices, that's always a good thing.
I mean, podcasts have really been influential for me in terms of my development, my education in the secular world, because, I was gone. I would be deployed for months at a time. And like my last trip, I was in Jordan. And so I was training for a marathon at the time. So, man, I just throw my, on my phone, just be out there running in the desert for an hour or two and just listening to everything from dogma debate to, everyone's agnostic to, you name it. I mean, humanist hour, anything that I could find. And definitely appreciated that, because kind of helped me get spun up on what else going on in the secular community, some of the issues, and like the culture and the unique challenges and opportunities. So I appreciate what you do, because it's been hugely educational for me. So.
Well, yeah, that's cool. I mean, people do it because they like to do it. I mean, and you hope they get some people to understand, learn things. There's always that side benefit. I mean, we're sure as fuck ain't in it for the money, unless you're a scathing atheist or cognitive dissonance, maybe, But they're not. Yeah, but no. I mean, most of it is because you just have a passion for it or whatever. And of course, there's people like you and Sunday Assembly who provide a community for the nuns. The secular community, and where you, like I said, you do charitable things and just kind of hang out and stuff. And of course, you do other things. Occasionally, you do potlucks, and you have teas. I think there's teas at the Cooks, and stuff like that. I went to I guess it was official. I don't know. Ashley Hall was leaving to go to Portland, and I went over the Cook's house for that, and played Cards Against Humanity for the first time.
Oh, no way. Very cool.
So that was interesting. Had a good time doing that. So yeah, I mean, part of it is just, getting to know people who are like yourself, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I kind of share your vision of, what can happen for Nashville, in the sense that basically, like you're saying, I mean, we're within 4 hours of just about anywhere in the southeastern United States, this side of the Mississippi. And so there's a lot of people, especially, in the Bible Belt, in this very religious part of the country that are within driving range of NaNoCon. And not only that, but like you were saying, Nashville is a destination in and of itself. And so, it's kind of like one of the top 10 cities in the United States, really. So it kind of has the tourist attractions destination thing. And so people can come out, make it a weekend, catch some of the nightlife, some of the culture. And we kind of try to promote that as part of NaNoCon in the sense that, for me personally, I'm, a little bit more on the introverted side, and I might not go out and kind of hang out downtown and, at Lower Broadway or just like a scene like that. Or, I love going to music and stuff like that, but I might not do it if it's just me by myself. But if a bunch of us can get together afterwards, like after the keynote and the after party there at NaNoCon, we want to have, again, what we did last year of having, like a location set aside that's reserved exclusively for us in downtown Nashville, where people can just show up and hang out. And, definitely there'll be alcohol involved, and, can hear a real Nashville band and just kind of hang out with a bunch of other, heathens and secular people that, in a social environment, but also in kind of like an entertainment situation that most people wouldn't normally, think of going to, if they were by themselves. So it's sort of like, kind of like what you're talking about with the Nashville thing. It can be a lot of fun. And, we want to provide that as part of like what we're doing with NaNoCon, of just organizing for people who are into that sort of thing.
Yeah, you're talking about introverts. I think the percent of introverts in this community is probably higher, to say the least, than in than the general population.
Yeah.
So I get what, I'm certainly one of those, and I don't like going out by myself if I can help it.
Right.
So, if you have a group with you, things are much more interesting and comfortable, I think. And that sense of community is probably one of the main reasons people go to these sort of things.
Yeah, for sure. Got others who are the more outgoing kind of like get a bunch of people and, go to, Lipstick Lounge or this lesbian bar in town and go karaoke, or something like that. That's been fun. So I kind of lean on people like that to organize that sort of thing, because it gets people out of what they would normally do, or, just kind of gets a group together and go have some fun. So we'll see what all we can do with it this year.
Yeah, Franco is a flamboyant musician guy.
He's awesome.
Who in a good way. I'm not, he's awesome. He's a great musician. He plays folk music, and I find that fascinating. We have some musical tastes in common, and he's a great guy. He loves to dance and karaoke, and I remember seeing him before I actually knew him last year at NaNoCon when he was in the band. I'm like, who the fuck is that guy? Because he just didn't care.
It's the one and only Franco Hashiguchi, man. He was actually the MC for the after party last year, and we'll see if he can help us out again this year. But he's a cool cat, and we had a really good group of people show up at a place downtown last year on Lower Broadway, so that was a lot of fun, and hopefully we get to do it again.
Yeah, I didn't make it last year, but I'm definitely going to do it this year for the after part.
Yeah, that was a good time.
I know that I don't know who all went, but I heard it was pretty decent amount of people.
Yeah, it was a good time. Part of the deal of having the thing at a high school is that we don't have alcohol served at the event, which not only is that just kind of like the regulations for the high school, but it kind of, for us organizers, it makes it a lot less headaches doing that. But we definitely want to have it to where people, not only when you get your meals at a restaurant nearby, you can go, have a drink or two with friends, but then afterwards, we'll definitely hang out together and party. So, if you're into that sort of thing, we want people to be able to kind of let their hair down a little bit and relax. So it's all good.
So why don't you give everybody here just a sort of links and things about where they can find out about NaNoCon?
Sure. Well, pretty much all of our social media, meaning Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, everything is at NashvilleNuns.com, and that's Nashville NONES for all of our handles, or so forth. And then the website itself, where you can find the speakers, their bios, the schedule, the announcements, all that good stuff, and where you can buy tickets. That our website is NashvilleNuns.com. So come check it out.
Yeah, definitely go to the website, and I found it on there, of course, there's group rates, I believe, is on there. That was just announced. There's going to be workshops going to be announced February 11th.
Yeah. And in fact, we're announcing some of that stuff now. It's just that's kind of like our cutoff date to be able to have all of the workshops announced. So
I see.
like you mentioned.
Yeah, I know about the podcast one since I'm going to be on that one, and I don't know about any others right now. And like I said, great speakers. Like you said, Matt Dillahunty, we both saw in East Tennessee last year.
That's right. He's awesome.
And Mandisa Thomas, who I'm looking forward to, JT Eberhardt, Calorad's going to be there, and a bunch of people. I'm hoping to get some more people there because I invited a bunch of people to the page to like the page, and I'm trying to spread the word since I'm supposed to be the social media guy, I guess.
You are, man. You've been kicking butt, man. That's great.
So I'm trying to spread the word a little bit, and get some of my friends down there from Pennsylvania.
No kidding.
So we'll see. So anyway, yeah, I'm really excited about it, and I appreciate your hard work in getting this together. I know it's not just you, there are other people involved, but you're my main contact, so I want to thank you for giving us a kind of a place to call our own here in Nashville, I guess you could say.
Yeah, definitely, man. It's a privilege, and I'll definitely give a shout out to James Reels, who is with me at Sunday Assembly. He's the volunteer coordinator, so if you want to find out how you can help out, just send us a note there on the contact box there on the website, and we'll put you in touch with James if you want to, get involved and support it. He's a great guy. Gail Jordan, of course, is phenomenal, and her and Elliot have been really instrumental in getting a lot of the speakers just because they know everybody in the secular community, and they're just great. And some other friends, Shannon and myself, kind of like doing the planning thing, and then people like you and many others who come on board and really are where the magic happens in terms of people spreading the word and telling their friends. And that's just one thing that if people could do, check out the website and share it on social media, because that's how the word spreads. So appreciate it.
Let me just say, James is a party animal.
James is awesome.
I hung out with him at the Lipstick Lounge, and it was a blast.
Yep, definitely.
And there are pictures. I'll just say that.
Anyway. Very cool.
All right, man. Well, thanks a lot for coming on and taking time out to talk to me.
Sure, my privilege. And looking forward to it and getting to hang out with everybody.
All right, man. Well, take it easy.
You bet. Good talking with you, Chris.
That'll do it for this episode of the Podunk Polymath Podcast. I want to thank Patrick Horst for coming on and talking to me. It was very enlightening, and I'm looking forward to going to NaNoCon. And look out for posts from my Twitter and Facebook sharing the various NaNoCon things, because I'm also putting up the social media stuff for NaNoCon, except for Instagram, which I never got the hang of. Of course, if you want to come check out the show, you can go to thepodunkpolymath.com. The music is by ... Facebook.com/... -62951461991 is the Facebook page. cdbaby.com/cd/... is where you can find their music. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Google+, under the Podunk Polymath. Email podunk.polymath@gmail.com. Patreon, if you want to become part of the posse. Patreon.com/thepodunkpolymath. Of course, you can call in. My voicemail number, 615-378-7676, which spells Popo. Of course, you can also become part of the Podunk Polymath Podcast posse on Facebook. It's a secret group that you have to ask to join, but it's so cool. It's at facebook.com/groups/the Podunk Polymath Podcast posse. All of those words are separated by periods. Of course, you can follow the show on WordPress. If you look on the side of the page there, it's on the very top, followed by my Twitter account, the feed. Of course, you can also find the show for the buttons if you want to donate on PayPal, subscribe on RSS, get it on Google Play, iTunes, and Stitcher. There's a button for the Patreon, recent posts, and recent comments. I want to thank y'all, and I want to thank my fellow podcasters as well for listening to the show. I know some of them do. And I want to thank my fellow podcasters for sharing my NaNoCon stuff. I was going to do a promo, but I just don't have the time or the inclination, frankly. So I've asked them to mention it in their shows, and I think many of them are going to. So I really appreciate that. I encourage everybody to either share it or come if you can. It's in Nashville, March 18th at Hillsborough High School. So hopefully you'll be there. Look me up. Give me a message on Facebook or send me a paper airplane. I don't know, however you want to do it. As long as I get it, it's all good. So until next time, y'all take it easy now, okay?